Welcome back to the channel where we remember the women who once lit up the screen, the stage, and the hearts of millions. In this video, we pay tribute to American female celebrities who sadly passed away in their 70s. Though they lived long enough to leave a legacy, their final years were often marked by quiet battles, hidden pain, or sudden goodbyes. Behind the smiles and the spotlight were real women, some fading away slowly from illness, others taken unexpectedly, but all leaving behind a deep emptiness for those who loved them. They were more than their fame, they were mothers, daughters, fighters, and friends. Today, we remember their stories, their last days, and the strength it took to face the end. Let's take a moment to honor what they gave to the world, and what the world lost when they were gone. Mary Wilson, the heart and soul behind one of the most legendary girl groups in music history. Mary, an original founding member of the Supremes, passed away quietly in her sleep on February 8, 2021, at her home in Henderson, Nevada, from hypertensive atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. She was just weeks away from turning 77 and had recently shared with fans that she was working on new solo music, excited to release it before her birthday. No one expected that only 2 days later, she would be gone. Her sudden death left not only her family, friends, and fans in deep sorrow, but also shook the music world that knew her as more than just a background voice. She was the glue that held the Supremes together through decades of highs and heartbreaking lows. Born on March 6, 1944, in Greenville, Mississippi, Mary was raised in Detroit, where she met Florence Ballard and Diana Ross in the Brewster Douglas housing projects. The three young girls, full of talent and dreams, formed the Primettes in 1959, which later became the Supremes, the crown jewel of Motown. Mary's smooth harmonies were behind 12 #1 hits on the Billboard charts, helping shape the Motown sound and open doors for black artists during a time of great racial tension in America. While Diana Ross was pushed to the front, it was Mary who remained steady, continuing with the group through countless changes until its end in 1977. She then became a best-selling author with her autobiography Dream Girl. My Life as a Supreme, a raw and honest look into her time with the group, and she never stopped performing. Her life, however, was not without deep pain. In 1994, her 14-year-old son Raphael tragically died in a car crash that also left her injured. And despite fame, she dealt with years of legal battles to protect the legacy of the Supremes' name. But she never let any of it dull her spirit. Even in her 70s, Mary stayed active, touring, writing, and fighting for musicians' rights. Just before her death, she still had so much hope for the future. The day she died, tributes poured in from Motown founder Berry Gordy and her longtime bandmate Diana Ross, both expressing shock and sadness at the loss of someone who helped build an empire with nothing but talent, determination, and grace. Mary Wilson may have left us in silence, but her voice, her strength, and her story will never be forgotten. She was a mother, a fighter, a dreamer, and above all, a woman who changed music forever. Mary Lynn Travers, the powerful voice and soul behind the legendary folk trio Peter, Paul, and Mary, who passed away on September 16, 2009 at the age of 72 after a long, painful battle with leukemia. Diagnosed in 2004, she underwent a bone marrow transplant in 2005 that brought a short remission. But over time, her health declined again, and she spent her final days at Danbury Hospital in Connecticut. Despite the complications from treatments, Mary remained brave and full of quiet strength, surrounded by friends, her loving husband Ethan Robbins, and the warm memories of a life lived with purpose. Even in her last moments, she found ways to show her love, still smiling, still responding, still being Mary, sharp, witty, generous, and deeply human. Her friend and bandmate Peter Yarrow said she never complained, never wanted to burden others, and held on to her dignity until the end. Born in Louisville, Kentucky, and raised in Greenwich Village by journalist parents, Mary was exposed to music and activism from a young age, often falling asleep to lullabies sung by Paul Robeson. She left school early to sing with folk groups and never thought of fame. Music was just something that came naturally. But in 1961, Her life changed when she joined Peter Yarrow and Paul Stuckey to form Peter, Paul and Mary, a group that blended harmonies with hope and stood for civil rights, peace, and social justice. With hits like If I Had a Hammer, Puff the Magic Dragon, and Blowin' in the Wind, their music became the soundtrack of a generation seeking change. Mary wasn't just the voice, she was the fire. With her striking blonde hair and a voice that carried both pain and strength, she brought something rare and unforgettable to every stage she stood on. She sang at the March on Washington in 1963, marched from Selma to Montgomery, and never backed away from using her voice to fight injustice. After the group split in 1970, she pursued a solo career, releasing 5 albums and even hosting a radio show, but eventually reunited with her bandmates to tour again in the late 70s and beyond. Her final years were spent in the quiet town of Redding, Connecticut, enjoying her family and holding on to the friendships and music that had shaped her world. She leaves behind 2 daughters, grandchildren, and millions of hearts who still carry her voice with them. Mary Travers didn't just sing songs, she gave them meaning. And even though leukemia took her life, it never touched her spirit. Her voice lives on, in the songs that still echo with truth, in the movements she inspired, and in the countless people she moved with her strength, her fire, and her grace. Aretha Franklin, the legendary Queen of Soul, whose voice defined generations and left an unmatched legacy in American music. On August 16, 2018, at the age of 76, Aretha passed away at her home in Detroit after a long and private battle with a rare form of pancreatic cancer known as a neuroendocrine tumor. In her final days, she was under hospice care, surrounded by close friends and family, with loved ones like Stevie Wonder and Jesse Jackson visiting her bedside to say their goodbyes. The news of her being gravely ill spread just days before her death, and while the world hoped for a miracle, her body quietly gave out from the toll of her illness. Her death came after years of declining health, including multiple canceled shows, surgeries, and mysterious medical treatments she rarely discussed publicly. She had battled weight issues, had quit smoking, and even said after one surgery in 2010 that doctors believed it could add another 15 to 20 years to her life. But sadly, the prediction didn't hold. Aretha had always been intensely private about her health, but behind the scenes, she was struggling. Even in pain, she kept performing until 2017, refusing to let go of the music that had defined her. Born on March 25, 1942, in Memphis, Tennessee, she was a child prodigy raised in Detroit, where she first sang gospel in her father's church. Her father, the famous preacher C. L. Franklin, helped guide her into music, and by age 14, she was already recording. Aretha became a young mother while still a teen, but despite her personal struggles, her gift only grew stronger. After a slow start at Columbia Records, she found her true breakthrough at Atlantic Records in the late 60s with unforgettable songs like Respect, Natural Woman, and Chain of Fools. Her voice wasn't just powerful, it was full of soul, fire, and heartbreak, touching millions and turning her into a symbol of Black pride and female strength. She would go on to win 18 Grammy Awards, sell over 75 million records, and become the first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Even presidents and kings couldn't ignore her greatness. She sang at Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral, performed at multiple inaugurations, and received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. In her final years, though she tried to keep going, her body was breaking down, and eventually, her doctors advised her to cancel her 2018 shows. As the cancer spread, she retreated into privacy until her final moments, never losing the dignity and strength that defined her life. Her funeral was massive, filled with celebrities, music legends, politicians, and fans from all over the world who came to say goodbye. From her early gospel roots to the biggest stages in the world, Aretha Franklin lived a life filled with beauty, pain, power, and grace. But in the end, it was the silence left by her passing that reminded us just how deeply her voice had touched the world. Suzanne Pleshette, the talented American actress whose smoky voice, striking beauty, and unforgettable screen presence left a lasting mark across television and film, but whose life ended far too sadly. She passed away on January 19, 2008, just 12 days before her 71st birthday, after a tough battle with lung cancer that eventually led to respiratory failure. Her final months were full of quiet suffering. After being diagnosed in 2006, doctors found a tiny spot on her lung during a routine X-ray. And though it was caught early and she was told she was in good spirits, the illness slowly took its toll. She went through chemotherapy and had part of her lung removed, but complications kept piling up. She was later hospitalized with pneumonia, and though she tried to show strength, arriving at a reunion in a wheelchair, insisting she was cancer-free, it was clear the fight was wearing her down. Just months after losing her beloved third husband, actor Tom Poston, Suzanne died in her Los Angeles home, closing a nearly 50-year-long career filled with laughter, drama, and a deep love for acting. Born in Brooklyn in 1937 to a dancer mother and a father who worked in show business, Suzanne grew up surrounded by the performing arts. She went from attending the High School of Performing Arts in Manhattan to studying under the famous Sanford Meisner at the neighborhood playhouse. With her deep voice and natural charm, she was quickly noticed and began working in both film and television, gaining early fame in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds 1963, where she played a warm-hearted schoolteacher who dies protecting a child. But it was her role as Emily Hartley on The Bob Newhart Show that made her a household name, playing the intelligent, caring wife of a psychologist and earning 2 Emmy nominations. She also took on dramatic roles, like her Emmy-nominated portrayal of Leona Helmsley in The Queen of Mean, and later voice roles in beloved animated films. Her career spanned decades, from Broadway to Disney films to late-career sitcom appearances, always marked by her signature wit and warmth. Suzanne married 3 times, including a brief union with Troy Donahue, and later found true love with Tom Poston, with whom she reunited decades after their early romance. She never had children, but spoke lovingly of the close-knit relationships she built on set and in her extended family. Despite facing heartbreak and illness in her final years, she never lost the spark that made her special. She made her last public appearance just months before her death, smiling alongside her former castmates, holding on to a sense of grace and humor even as her health failed. Today, we honor not just the star we saw on screen, but the brave woman behind the roles, one who gave so much to her craft and faced her final days with quiet courage. Lucille Ball, the legendary American actress and comedian who passed away on April 26, 1989, after suffering a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm just days after surviving major heart surgery to repair a tear near her heart. Though she made it through a risky 7-hour procedure and even seemed stable, her body couldn't take any more, and she died suddenly in the early morning, leaving behind a stunned and heartbroken world. Just over a week before her death, she had experienced chest pains and was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where doctors discovered the aortic issue that required emergency surgery. And while everyone hoped the worst was behind her, another undetected tear in a different part of her aorta took her life without warning. She was 77. Lucille's last days were spent quietly in the hospital, surrounded by family and with the hope she would soon return home. But fate had other plans for a woman who had brought so much laughter to the world. Born in Jamestown, New York, in 1911, Lucille had a difficult childhood, losing her father at just 3 years old and facing separation from her mother during the tough years that followed. But she never gave up on her dream of performing and eventually became a model, and later, one of Hollywood's most unforgettable stars. After years of playing small parts and earning the nickname Queen of the B-movies, her big break came when she created and starred in the groundbreaking sitcom I Love Lucy with her then-husband Desi Arnaz. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, and their behind-the-scenes business sense changed television forever. Together they launched Lucille Productions, which not only produced I Love Lucy but also gave life to shows like Star Trek and Mission Impossible. Lucille wasn't just a star. She became the first woman to run a major Hollywood studio. But beyond all her awards and achievements, it was her incredible sense of timing, fearless physical comedy, and the way she made people laugh that truly made her a household name. She was nominated for 13 Emmy Awards, won 5, and was honored throughout her life with everything from a Kennedy Center honor to the Television Hall of Fame. And even when her final attempt at a TV comeback, Life with Lucy, failed, She stayed gracious, never bitter, just proud of a career that had already changed entertainment history. Lucille Ball wasn't just a comedian. She was a trailblazer, a survivor, and a true icon whose humor touched millions and whose sudden death reminded us all how fragile life can be, even for someone who always seemed so strong. Elizabeth Taylor, one of the most iconic actresses in film history, whose life ended with heartbreak and pain on March 23, 2011, when she passed away at 79 from complications of congestive heart failure. In her final weeks, she was admitted to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, where she stayed for over 6 weeks as her condition worsened. Despite multiple surgeries and years of battling health problems, including diabetes, scoliosis, heart issues, and even a brain tumor, Elizabeth fought quietly but bravely until her body couldn't take it anymore. Surrounded by her children in her last moments, she passed away at 1:28 a.m., leaving behind a world that had been in awe of her since she first appeared on screen at just 10 years old. Born in London on February 27, 1932, to American parents, she moved to Los Angeles as a child, and by 12, she was already a household name thanks to her breakout film National Velvet. Her piercing violet eyes and natural grace made her unforgettable. But what truly kept her in the spotlight for over 6 decades was her raw talent and her stormy, fascinating personal life. She rose to fame in the golden era of Hollywood, starring in hits like A Place in the Sun, Giant, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and Cleopatra, and winning 2 Academy Awards for Butterfield 8 and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. But behind the glitz and fame, her life was filled with personal battles. She was married 8 times to 7 different men, struggled with addiction, endured heartbreak, and outlived close friends and husbands, including Mike Todd, who died tragically in a plane crash. Her love affair and 2 marriages to actor Richard Burton were a media obsession, their passion both thrilling and turbulent. Later in life, Elizabeth turned her fame into action, becoming one of the first major celebrities to fight for AIDS awareness, founding the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation in 1991. She lived large, loved fiercely, and never stopped giving. Even in her final years, she was writing letters, making calls, and helping those she cared about, including leaving a generous amount to her ex-husband Larry Fortensky. Elizabeth Taylor was more than just a beautiful face or a movie star. She was a fighter, a lover, a mother, a friend, and an unstoppable force of nature. Her death was not just the end of a life, but the closing of a chapter in Hollywood history. The world lost more than a star that day. It lost a legend. Teri Garr, a brilliant American actress whose humor, warmth, and charm lit up countless screens, but whose final years were a quiet, heartbreaking battle against a cruel illness. Teri passed away at the age of 79 from complications of multiple sclerosis, the disease that had slowly taken her independence since the late 1990s. She died peacefully at her Los Angeles home, surrounded by loved ones. For over 2 decades, Teri had lived with Ms. after feeling strange sensations in her leg and arm as early as 1983, symptoms that gradually worsened until she was finally diagnosed in 1999. At first, she kept her illness a secret, scared it would end her career. And sadly, when she finally shared her diagnosis with the world in 2002, the roles dried up. But instead of disappearing, she used her voice to speak out for others with Ms., making people laugh even while talking about her pain. She once said that explaining herself to people was exhausting, but being with others who understood her struggle brought comfort. In 2006, she suffered a brain aneurysm and fell into a coma. But incredibly, she fought her way back to speech and mobility. Still, her health continued to decline over the years, and by the end, her world had grown small. But what a life she lived. Born Teri Ann Garr on December 11, 1944, in Lakewood, Ohio, or possibly Los Angeles, depending on who you ask, she grew up surrounded by showbiz. Her father was a vaudeville comedian, her mother a rockette. Teri lost her father when she was just 11, a painful loss that shaped her. But her mother worked hard to support the family and encouraged Teri's love of dance. By 16, Teri was dancing in stage productions like West Side Story, and soon, she was in Hollywood, landing background roles in Elvis Presley films like Viva Las Vegas and Clambake. She paid her dues, appearing in uncredited roles, dancing on Shindig, and showing up on TV shows like Star Trek and Batman. But everything changed when she met Mel Brooks, who cast her in Young Frankenstein as the goofy German lab assistant, a role that made her a star. From there, her career soared. She brought laughs and heart to films like Oh God, Mr. Mom, and most famously, Tootsie, where her portrayal of a struggling actress earned her an Academy Award nomination. She wasn't just funny, she had depth. Her work in Close Encounters of the Third Kind and The Black Stallion proved she could handle serious roles, even if Hollywood rarely gave her the chance. Off-screen, she was a staple on talk shows, especially with David Letterman, who adored her sharp wit and spontaneous humor. But behind the smile, Teri was living with mounting health problems. For years, she pushed through the pain, making appearances on shows like Friends and Law and Order. But her body slowly gave out. Still, she never gave in to bitterness. In her memoir Speed Bumps, she wrote honestly, and with her usual humor, about her fight with Miz and her roller coaster ride through Hollywood. Teri Garr wasn't flashy, and she was never the loudest person in the room, but she made everything she touched brighter. She leaves behind her daughter Molly, a grandson, and a legacy of laughter, resilience, and courage. Her death is a painful loss, but what she gave the world, the joy, the honesty, the spark, will never fade. Marcia Wallace, a beloved American actress and comedian who made millions laugh with her sharp wit and unforgettable voice, but whose life ended in a way that left many in sorrow. She passed away on October 25, 2013, just a week shy of her 71st birthday, due to complications from pneumonia and sepsis, with her long battle against breast cancer listed as a contributing condition. In her final days, Marcia had been quietly battling illness, something the people closest to her, including colleagues on The Simpsons, had been aware of, though the public didn't know the full extent. She died peacefully at her home in Los Angeles, and though her funeral was private, the outpouring of grief from fans and co-stars made it clear how deeply she was loved. Marcia's death came as a shock even though she had been a cancer survivor since 1985. She had faced it head-on for nearly 3 decades while also coping with the earlier loss of her husband to pancreatic cancer and dealing with her own personal health battles, including a nervous breakdown and struggles with bulimia. Despite all this, she never stopped working or making people laugh. Born in Creston, Iowa, on November 1, 1942, Marcia grew up helping out in her father's general store and fell in love with acting during high school. She earned a full scholarship to Parsons College, where she majored in English and theater, and then moved to New York with just $150 in her pocket to chase her dream. She got her start in comedy clubs and off-Broadway stages before breaking into television, eventually becoming a household name as the witty receptionist Carol Kester on The Bob Newhart Show. Later, she won hearts all over again when she voiced the chain-smoking, no-nonsense teacher Edna Krabappel on The Simpsons, a role that earned her an Emmy in 1992 and cemented her legacy. Her laugh, distinctive, raspy, and warm, became iconic. But it wasn't just her voice or her comedic timing that made her special. Marcia used her fame to speak openly about her cancer diagnosis, dedicating much of her life to raising awareness about early detection and survivorship. She won the Gilda Radner Courage Award and inspired thousands by sharing her story in her honest and funny memoir, Don't Look Back, We're Not Going That Way. Despite living through pain, loss, and illness, Marcia never let go of her spirit, her humor, or her purpose. Her character on The Simpsons was retired after her death, and tributes poured in from every corner. Yeardley Smith, who voices Lisa Simpson, said heaven had just become a much funnier place. From a small-town girl in Iowa to one of television's most loved voices, Marcia Wallace lived a life filled with laughter, hardship, resilience, and grace. And though she's gone, her voice, her legacy, and her courage will always stay with us. Cilla Black, the beloved English singer, television presenter, and entertainer who passed away at the age of 72 after a tragic fall at her holiday villa in Estepona, Spain on August 1, 2015. Scylla suffered a stroke caused by a subarachnoid hemorrhage after falling backwards and hitting her head. She was alone and wasn't found for several hours, which led to fatal complications. In her final years, she had been quietly struggling with serious health problems, including arthritis and hearing and vision loss, and had told friends she was approaching death. It's heartbreaking to think that someone who had filled so many lives with laughter and love spent her last hours in pain and silence. Born Priscilla Maria Veronica White in Liverpool in 1943, Scylla grew up in a working-class Catholic family, dreaming of becoming a star. As a young woman, she worked as a cloakroom attendant at Liverpool's famous Cavern Club, where her talent caught the attention of the Beatles, who helped introduce her to their manager Brian Epstein. With his guidance and the support of legendary producer George Martin, she released hit after hit, including Anyone Who Had a Heart and You're My World, both of which topped UK charts and made her one of the biggest-selling female artists of the 1960s. But her career didn't end with music. Scylla later became one of Britain's most iconic television hosts, charming millions on Blind Date and Surprise Surprise. Despite her fame, she was known for staying grounded and kind, always connecting with people in an honest and natural way. Behind her bright smile was a woman who had faced deep pain. She battled breast cancer in the 80s, lost her infant daughter, and became a widow in 1999 when her beloved husband and manager Bobby Willis died of cancer. But Scylla never let grief stop her. She kept going, always finding a way to bring light to others. Her sudden death shocked the world, and her funeral in Liverpool was attended by stars and everyday people alike, all of them mourning the loss of a woman who truly felt like family. The day after she was laid to rest, her greatest hits album went to #1 in the UK, a final reminder of how deeply loved she was. From her early days singing in Liverpool clubs to becoming a national treasure on television, Cilla Black lived a life filled with both glory and heartbreak. She made people smile for over 5 decades, and her legacy will live on through her music, her shows, and the countless lives she touched along the way.